In this episode, we talk about the environmental concerns around the use of artificial intelligence. We also talk about how 3 life-saving cancer drugs are set to become cheaper. But first, we talk about the Delhi High Court criticizing the police's role in the 2020 city riots. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express news show. In February 2020, more than 50 people died and several others were injured in one of the worst communal riots that Delhi had seen in decades. And during this time, while the rioters tore through the northeast part of the capital, 2 videos in particular went viral.
Which basically showed a young man being encircled and beaten mercilessly by those who were wearing police gear. They were wearing riot gear. They had batons in their hands.
That's Indian Express's Apurva Vishwanath.
And there was a second video which showed several young men. They were lying in an injured state on the road.
One of these men was a 23-year-old named Faizan.
And you could see policemen beating them. None of this is disputed even by the Delhi police in the court. There were some injuries and you could hear policemen on the spot abusing them, hitting them with their lathis and batons, and asking them to sing the national anthem when they almost looked like they were not even conscious. So these 2 videos were everywhere. Most of our listeners would have seen it on Twitter and on YouTube. It is this case which happened on 24th February in 2020 that Delhi High Court has now made a decision in.
Right, and Apurva, before we talk about the decision, can you tell us what happened to Faizan after what was recorded in that clip?
So Faizan was a 23-year-old. He was actually working in a meat shop in the Ghazipur Mandi. And after this incident happened, Faizan had serious injuries. And according to the record, the policemen themselves later took him to GTB Nagar Hospital, where he had sustained a lot of injuries and he passed away. He could not be saved because of the injuries. And this is what we're talking about is 4.5 years ago. But despite that time lapse, right, not even one policeman involved in that abuse and assault has been identified, has been named unaccused in the case. His mother, of course, moved the Delhi High Court. Kismatun, his mother, went to the Delhi High Court saying that the Delhi police is not doing enough. For the case was, of course, with the Delhi Crime Branch, which was investigating. But even after the court pushed the Delhi police to apprise them of the investigation, present the status of the investigation, it seemed like the Delhi police had really not done anything in that case.
And as far as the Delhi police is concerned, it did face a lot of criticism regarding what it did and did not do while the riots were going on. So could you tell us a bit about the police's role during this time, and especially in the context of this video?
So just as a ordinary view on all of these, of course, right, not going into the specifics of the riot itself, there is a offense of commission and there's an offense of omission, right? So there are many examples where you can see that the police is standing by, not acting, not doing enough, or is perceived to be not doing enough, right? For all of those, well, there could be reasons, there could be subjective calls made by the police on ground, and that's a different thing. What we saw in these 2 videos, right, and which is something that even the Delhi police does not dispute, was the police actively aiding communal rioting. They picked on a Muslim man and kicked him, questioned his loyalty to the country, and forced him to sing the national anthem while he was down. I mean, if there was one, this would have been India's George Floyd moment. But what happens later is that the Delhi police comes to court and says, we could not identify any policeman in that video. And the reason they give is because, everybody is wearing riot gear and, how can we identify them? We've not been able to. Then on some more prodding by the judge, the Delhi police says, okay, let's see. And then they say, look, we can't identify them because it's not as if police from that jurisdiction were posted there. On the day of the riot, policemen from all across the city were posted everywhere. So we can't identify them.
Right. And it was only later that the police said that they had identified 2 individuals in the case. So can you tell us about that and what the status of the investigation is at the moment?
So when this case picks up some steam, there is arguments that are being happening in court. Then the Delhi police comes and says, okay, we've identified 2 people. We did put them through a polygraph test. So we put certain people under a polygraph test and 2 policemen. And they've named a head constable and a constable whose responses during the tests were found to be quote unquote deceptive. Now, they asked the policeman, were you at that area when this happened? The policeman said they were not. But it seems that the record shows that they were in fact present during that incident in that area. That's all. This is not in relation to whether they committed the crime or not, but just that they were lying on some aspect about being posted there. Thereafter, the police said that they compared their voice samples. So there's a voice matching test, which is a forensic test that they put them through. And it seems that these samples match certain words that were spoken in those videos. And by the way, even as we are speaking, these policemen have not been named as an accused in the murder of Faizan. It just mentions these 2 and there is a departmental inquiry going on against them. And this is the status of investigation.
And some of the observations that the court has made in Faizan's case are really striking. So tell us about what are the things that stand out for you in this order.
So the operative part of the order is nothing surprising. The court has a disbelief for, the progress of investigation and what the Delhi police has been doing so far. So on that front, they've transferred the investigation to CBI now. It's only at that stage where the investigation has just simply been transferred to another agency, which is seemingly neutral, doesn't really come under Delhi police. So there is that. Of course, it's an entirely different story that the CBI was established under the Delhi Police Act. But anyway, CBI is considered, not a party to this. So CBI is going to investigate this case now. That's the first part of it, which is as usual and as expected. But what is striking about this, Shashank, is how the High Court perceives the series of events, right? Because remember, this is not a conviction. This is not saying that the policemen are guilty. This is just a prima facie view, right? And even in this prima facie view, just looking at those videos and the evidence on record so far, the High Court says this is a hate crime by the police. That the police have been driven and motivated by religious bigotry and therefore this would be a hate crime. So I can't think of another instance where a constitutional court, just while ordering an investigation, right, not at the time of conviction, has called out actions of the police in such terms. And, we always had cases relating to custodial torture or other excesses of police, things like that. But something so systemic and structural where, a group of policemen stood while there was a riot happening in the city and inflamed those communal sentiments and forced a man to sing the national anthem as if to prove his allegiance to the nation. And then subsequently, the Delhi police as an institution sort of covering it up for them. The pace of the investigation or lack thereof shows that it's not just the policeman's individual actions, but an entire institutional cover-up of the issue. And, this is why the High Court's intervention is so significant.
And next, we talk about the environmental impact of artificial intelligence. Earlier this month, in its annual environment report, Google recorded a 13% increase in its emissions in 2023 compared with the previous year. Now, this 13% rise is said to be because of how much more electricity Google's data centers and supply chains are consuming. And what's concerning is that the tech giant expects this trend to continue due to the growing use of AI. In this segment, Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha, who writes on science for the paper, tells us more about it. So Amitabh, when we compare the energy consumption of a normal search engine to that of an AI chatbot like ChatGPT, what does that difference look like? How much more energy does AI consume?
Right. So the energy consumption of artificial intelligence is several times more than your normal internet search. And so one of the very common comparisons, and there was a study also that came out last year, which said, a very simple question, text-only question in ChatGPT, for example, consumes about 33 times more electricity than the same question being typed in a Google search. So that is the order. There are other studies, other estimates, which say, somewhere between 10 and 25 times more. Now, we are talking only in terms of the text-only searches for a question. When you put an image, when you ask AI to make a video for you or maybe a PowerPoint presentation for you, it will consume much more energy in comparison to, something similar. And of course, you can't ask Google to make a video for you. But just in terms of similarity of task, picture-based searches or video-based searches would consume much more energy than just text-based searches.
And Amitabh, that's mainly because it's doing a lot more work than what a normal search engine does, right? That's why there is more energy consumption.
Yes. The main reason is that, when you put in a query in a chat GPT or any similar large language model that are frequently being used these days, it just does much more work than a normal Google search. So what does Google search do usually? And most of these internet searches actually, they look for the keywords that you have typed in and they search for those keywords across the internet and they bring forth the result to you. The artificial intelligence, the kind of engines that we are using these days, they work in a fundamentally different way. They are not just searching for keywords. They are just trying to first understand what you are trying to ask. And they do far larger number of work trying to give you an adequate human-like response. Now, when you do much more work, so in computer terms, what does it mean, doing more work? It just means, processing much more data. And even further, that means more electrical signals. That is what it comes down to actually. When you're talking in terms of computer doing work, it is just sending many more signals, electric signals, to either fetch or process data that you need. So once you're sending many more signals, obviously you're consuming much more energy. And that's what happens in the background when you send a query on ChatGPT or any of the other similar engines that we have been using.
Right, and there have actually been similar concerns about cryptocurrency as well. But when we talk about AI, we're still at very early stages. Its use is only going to increase. So could you talk about the kind of concerns that have been raised in terms of its environmental impact?
Yes, there are already concerns that the electricity demands would rise up, very sharply. So it's already evident in some locations, some of the countries where, you have large data centers. These data centers are where your, servers are placed, wherein not just artificial intelligence, but also all the other processes, your entire cloud computing, your things like Facebook or Google or Amazon, everything that we want to do on the internet. They are routed through these servers, which are, large warehouse kind of establishments having thousands of servers. And these data centers, actually, the energy consumption of data centers have been talked about for a fair amount of time now. Just that with the advent of AI, this has become even more sharper. And so a country like Ireland, for example, for its size, having a disproportionately large number of data centers have already started to account for about 4 to 5% of the electricity demand for the entire country. So it's becoming a significant portion, right? So, and as you rightly said, we are just at the beginning of the AI age. It's just taken baby steps as of now. What we are expected to see is a a very big expansion in the deployment and usage of AI in the coming years, which means this is going to get into, we are getting into a real problem area. So one counter argument to this sometimes given is that AI can be deployed to find climate solutions itself. And the deployment of AI itself would lead to massive reductions in electricity and emissions.
So what they're saying is that although this technology right now is consuming a lot of energy, we could use this technology to reduce that consumption by minutely tracking the wastage points, for example.
And both of them are true, actually. We have seen that AI is consuming a huge amount of energy, but the uses of AI in finding solutions, including climate solutions, are also very well expected.
And in the end, we talk about life-saving cancer drugs. In her budget speech last Tuesday, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced that 3 cancer drugs will now be exempted from customs duty.
To provide relief to cancer patients, I propose to fully exempt 3 more medicines from customs duties.
These three medicines, trastuzumab deruxtecan, osimertinib, and durvalumab, are targeted cancer drugs that are known to be better than the traditional forms of cancer treatments. In this segment, Indian Express's Anonna Dutt joins us to talk about these drugs and the extent to which they will now get cheaper. Anonna, these three medicines are in fact targeted cancer drugs. So can you tell us how targeted cancer drugs work?
So basically, the new generation of cancer drugs, they attack the cancer cells alone and they do not harm the other cells surrounding them, which is why they produce better results. They also reduce the amount of side effects that a person experiences, as opposed to chemotherapy, which would in general just attack all tissues in a given area. So those are the newer kind of therapies. And then, of course, there is a section of these targeted therapies called immunotherapy, which is essentially therapies that train your own immune system to attack the cancer cells. So that is where the cancer treatment is headed now.
And these three drugs that we are talking about, they're used to treat various kinds of cancers, including breast, bladder, ovarian, and lung, to name just a few. Tell us, how much do these drugs cost right now and how much cheaper are they going to get?
So all the three drugs that have been exempt from customs are patented drugs. So they are quite expensive, costing upwards of 1 lakh rupees per vial or per strip of the medicine. And some of these medicines have to be taken by the patients for 3-4 years. So that's a significant amount of cost that they incur. And the customs on these products right now, like before the budget was 10%, and now it would be 0%.
And can you tell us how many people this decision is likely going to affect and the extent to which cancer cases have been rising in the country?
So India has been witnessing an increase in the number of cancers. If we look at the data from National Cancer Registry, about 14.6 lakh new cancers were detected in 2022, which was an increase from 14.2 in 21 and 13.9 in 2020. So there is an increase in the cancers. There's also an increase in the deaths that we're seeing. And breast cancer and lung cancer is two of the cancers for which these therapies are used. So breast cancer is the most common cancer among women, and lung cancer is the second most common cancer among men. So these are quite prevalent, although these drugs are used for a very specific section of patients with these diseases because they should have these specific genetic mutations in their cancer to use the drugs. However, we just asked for an estimate from Dr. Abhishek Shankar, who's an oncologist at AIIMS. And according to him, about at least 1 lakh people in India would benefit from using these drugs.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.